Elon Musk talked about what he thinks about the moon landing and whether it was real or fake. He has joked for years that if the moon landing were fake, America's rivals would have blown the whistle in a heartbeat. That's the lens that we're using today. In this video, we will talk about one ultimate evidence that will end the debate on the moon landing and whether it was real or fake once and for all. Rival Scrutiny dismantles moon landing hoax narratives. I'm going to test the biggest it was fake claims, then push higher. We'll look at what other nations, later orbiters, independent labs, and the next lunar missions do to the story, so let's get into it. Starting with the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were not friends. They were tracking each other every day on every frequency that they could find. The Soviet network could hear deep space signals, follow trajectories, and count down radar echoes. When the Apollo 11 mission landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969, the footage was broadcast to households all across the country. If Apollo were a TV set in a warehouse, they would have celebrated the catch on the front page. They never did because they were listening to a real mission flying to the moon. Remember, we went to the moon not once, but many times, and I think the Russians would have called us out on that one if it wasn't true. We have sent 9 crews toward the moon, 6 landings touched down. That gives rivals 9 chances to find a glitch big enough to expose a hoax or at least make some noise. Instead, both sides quietly knew the truth. The world saw live tracking, not just from America, but from radio astronomers and observatories far outside of NASA's control. Now, you can fool a viewer, but you cannot fool radar and physics across continents. Conspiracy talk started almost immediately, and it grew as public trust fell in the 1970s. According to the history of these claims, people mixed real anger from Watergate with space rumors. That is how doubt sticks. But also note this, only a handful of the 24 people who actually traveled to the moon are still alive. Their stories have been tested for decades by journalists, engineers, and other astronauts. None of those interviews cracked under pressure. Rivals had motive and tools, and they didn't find a fake. Now, let's face the most shared photo claims. First, the missing stars. Some claim that if the astronauts were truly in space, then the stars would have been visible in the inky background. Hoax videos say no stars in the sky, so it's a studio. Now that sounds smart until you learn a simple camera rule. On a bright surface, like noon in a desert, you set a fast shutter and a low ISO. You do that to avoid blown out whites. When you do, dim points vanish. The moon is sunlit rock. The astronauts wore white suits. The lander was shiny. The stars are there, but the exposure setting hides them. Anyone can test this at night in a city with a bright billboard. The physics is boring, which is why it's true. Second, the crosshairs behind objects argument. Additionally, skeptics point to the crosshairs apparent in many of the moon landing photos. Some photos show a crosshair that looks like it is sliced by a bright rover panel or a white suit. Hoaxers say the object must be pasted on top. Not so. The crosshair is thin. Very bright areas bloom on film. That glow washes over the hairline and makes it look cut. Photographers have recreated this many times with backlit sheets and simple glass reticles. No CGI needed. The effect is optical, not magical. Independent testers have gone further. They rebuild the lighting in controlled rooms. They match the sun's angle with a single distant light. They dust surfaces to mimic fine lunar soil, which is very reflective. The shadows line up. The highlight roll-off matches what you'd expect from a harsh, unfiltered sun. You don't need a studio, you need a lamp far away and physics that doesn't lie. Rival labs or students with a garage can do the same exercises and get the same results. Now jump forward in time. Long after Apollo, a new spacecraft went into lunar orbit and started taking close-up images. The pictures show the descent stages still sitting on the surface. You can trace the rover tracks like gentle pencil lines. You can even see the paths the astronauts walked because their boots scuffed the powder and changed how it reflects light. This isn't a TV set. It is hardware and footprints recorded by different instruments in a different era. From Earth with a backyard telescope, you cannot see the lander. It is far too small. But you can easily point your scope to the region where Apollo 11 touched down. It is a known spot on the moon's face. Then, if you want detail, you look at the modern orbital images. Those images were made by precise cameras circling the moon, not by broadcasters editing tape. The key is this: new eyes, new tools, same story. That's adversarial time working against a hoax and for the truth. Here's where the story gets even stronger. The most powerful test of any claim is to revisit it decades later with fresh hands. That's what modern missions are doing with Apollo samples. Some rocks were sealed for about a half a century. Scientists waited until tools improved. They opened those tubes recently, and inside they found trapped gases and grains that tell new stories about the moon's history. One analysis points to debris from a distant impact likely triggering a rare landslide. Old evidence, new tools, fresh results. Fakes do not age this well. And that's just the start. The original Apollo samples changed how we see the solar system. We learned about the moon's violent birth, its volcanic past, and how its surface weathers in space. New studies keep coming because the data is still rich. When you can reopen a box after 50 years and pull out new answers, you're watching rival scrutiny across time. New labs, new teams, new methods. The chain never breaks, and the story stays intact. Next comes the ultimate audit. Go back. Well, human crews will return. Commercial landers are already practicing soft landings. The plan is to bring home fresh rocks and fresh video. They'll map old sites in higher detail. They'll remeasure the dust, the glass beads, the isotope patterns in the rocks. Isotope just means a version of an element. If the patterns match what Apollo brought back, it's another independent stamp. If the artifacts left by Apollo are still there, we'll see them with modern cameras and standing humans. That's not nostalgia, that's an on-site modern check. Future crews won't be the Apollo team. That matters. Adversarial testing is not about trust. It is about separation. Different agencies, different companies, different politics. When people who didn't run Apollo confirm Apollo with their own sensors, hoax narratives collapse. It's like checking a math problem with a different method. If the answer matches, you can breathe. The more independent the method, the stronger the proof. So why do these claims persist? Well, two reasons. First, doubt spreads faster than repair on social media. A short, spicy claim beats a quiet physics lesson. Second, polls show a small but real group still thinking that the landing was fake. In one national survey a few years ago, about 6% said it didn't happen. Among younger adults, it was around 11%. That doesn't mean the evidence is weak, it means attention is noisy and classrooms are uneven. You also see clip mashing. For example, there's a short Buzz Aldrin interview clip where people shared to prove the broadcasts were animated. In the full context, he's describing how TV used simple graphics to fill dead air when live signals were limited. Now that is a broadcast choice, not a fake mission. When you watch the full segment, the claim falls apart. Rival scrutiny here means that you don't accept a meme. You check the longer cut. You compare timelines. You ask boring questions. The heat goes out of the rumor. If the moon landing were a fake, each of these stages would be a landmine. A rival would have stepped on it in 1969. A spacecraft would have exposed it in high-resolution images. A lab would have found the trick in the rock chemistry. A future mission would arrive and find nothing where something should be. That cascade never happened. Instead, every stage added another layer of confirmation from people who didn't owe Apollo anything.